A snipering. My mum said I could shoot it. So, never not cringing. So, hello and welcome to today's episode of My Mum Said I Could Watch It. Assault on Precinct 13, John Carpenter, 1976. Year I was born, I was just a baby step. Not the usual Ritz blockbuster story with this one, although it predates that. I dare say my brother had rented it at some point back in the big box. First saw this film in 1994. We've just moved in. Me being me, Ram, Matt, and Dave. Greenstead House. This is pretty much that post half term. I can't remember what universities called it in those days. Hayes. Four guys. We've really known each other for about 8 weeks. Buddies for life. Of course, Essex University. We didn't tune in from the beginning. In fact, we had the perfect timing. I suspect it was movie drone. I suspect it was Alex Cox. But one thing I do know is that if you tune in to Assault on Precinct 13, just as a young girl goes, I wanted Ripple on it, you're going to be watching the film for the rest of your life. It was that simple. 4 18-year-olds. I don't think any of us had even hit 19 at that point. Watching it, watching it now again, just the concept of seeing that just sets up such a mission statement. This is not the film that you're used to if you're an 80s, 90s guy. There are certain rules. Kids were going to be okay being really high up there. I genuinely think that the main reason people tune in for John Wick would be less popular if it was about the wife and not the dog. I genuinely think that has this weird impact on taboo with regards to films. Those who don't recall it correctly, a local gang, really a conglomerate gang, multicultural gang in 1976. I want to talk about those politics in a bit. Have been pretty much assaulted. Most of the main heads, large bodies of them, have been taken out by the police, the LAPD, very early on, very brutally, very fast as well. There's no intention of arresting anyone. As such, the four figures that we see here, each pretty much representing a different arena, barrio, precinct, as it were, of LA, just go on a random killing spree. They've got the guns, they've got silencers, and the only thing that seems to be stopping them is happenstance. That is literally it. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got just behind me Ethan Bishop. He's now been promoted, and he's going to be looking after a precinct, the aforementioned Precinct 13. Ethan's great, I've got to say, on a number of levels. On the one hand, and it's great to see, and it did make me think about a lot of how we do cast things, to see a black actor in this particular role. Not just because it's also comes out with the classic lines, black for over 30 years. Gee, that's just funny. That's just funny. But it's also interlaced with a very constructed, small c conservative bootstrap, smacks of republicanism view that Ethan brings to the whole role. It's pretty clear that he has a great sense of duty, due diligence to the law. But there's also when he turns around and goes, no one took me out of this area. I walked out myself at 20. That is a statement. That is a real rarefied statement of someone who has actualized themselves and has a certain snobbery about it. I've got myself out of here. What's your problem? It runs through a lot. On the other hand, you have Napoleon Wilson, who is the killer. We don't really know much about him. He could have been a Woody Harrelson type for all we know. But he never really speaks about it. Everything is a past, everything is enigmatic. But he manages to pull it off. It's not like he's a particularly physically intimidating guy. It's not like he's 8 foot or particularly aggressive. in any way. It's just a certain centeredness. The way he deals with the world it does have a justice in and of its own. There's a good cop there in terms of driving him to be killed. And there's a bad cop. He has no problems in talking to the good guys. But the bad guy who uses his position of authority to abuse, he makes sure he gets a comeuppance and literally trips up on it. It's a siege film. It's a template which we see John Carpenter through his work come back to again and again. Um, the fact is that we spend so much of the film before we actually get to being trapped in Precinct 13. We see the sprawl, we see the economic issues here, we see the logistics. You know, the suburban dad who ends up shooting one of the warlords after his daughter dies, he's merely trying to get his mother out of there as well. The actual logistics of how that precinct works, sells, how people aren't responding, how they can put police cars back where they were. It's just brilliantly done. It's incredibly crafted. On the one hand, it's a very lean film. It's a very short run time, barely over 80 minutes, and it's one location. The vast majority of the film is one location, the precinct, and even then, you're really just talking about the foyer. Basement and jail is a secondary. The Deus Ex Machina of an acetylene tank pretty much sums it up. But it spends so long getting there. It's because it wants you to believe in LA. It wants you to understand the strife in LA. It wants you to understand the dissonance within LA. And even to the end, when you have this rather Republican black cop walking out with this um, white killer who's walking out literally to his government sanctioned death. I mean, he's really taken by the fact that a man's diligence to the law is to keep him alive just to die for one more day. There is a morality there, and there is something that has to be admired. And I think the casting of Ethan Bishop's role really, really does bring a lot. Um, the female roles relatively minor. One is much more classical. The other is a bit more self-assured, and obviously falls for the bad guy. I would say that it still stands as a solid film. I think anyone could get something from it, particularly anyone interested in low budget filmmaking. What you do is keep the premise simple, but make the characters as rich as possible with as sparse a dialogue as possible. It is the epitome of show not tell of one's personality. Put it on again. You won't you won't be disappointed. It's an afternoon. It's dinner. It really is still quite gripping and ingenious in how it plays. So that's me for this time. Until then, don't go changing and be kind. Rewind.